Good evening, or good morning, or whatever time of the day you happen to be watching this video. We are mid-auction at the minute, so we're looking at all the bottles here in our store. We were going to pick out a few today, so we thought, who better than to help me with some of the American one than the world's greatest ever living... What did he tell me to say? The world's greatest ever living brand ambassador that just happens to know a bit about American stuff ever in the world ever, Mr. Michael Clement. Will you please join me? Without knocking any of the bottles. I know you're very nervous in there.
Those shelves are a bit narrower than you'd reckon. How are you?
How do you think I feel?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably nearly as wide that way as you are as wide that way.
In fairness to Anthony, he has spared no expense, and he's bringing you someone that actually knows something about whiskey. And they'll be along very shortly.
Where are they? Mick, we are in the middle of an auction. All our auctions grow every month, as have been the case. I got tired of saying this is our biggest ever auction because people used to take the piss out of me. Not that anybody ever takes the piss out of me. But American and Scotch are two of the biggest growing ones for us. And we've actually found ourselves in positions where we've had bottles of American whiskey. We're sending them back to America. So obviously, we're not doing something right because they must be cheap or here then guys can get stuff in America. So some of the stuff that's gone is Blanton's.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know a bit about Blanton's. How is it so collectible and how are people losing their shit over it?
So yeah, you've the likes of the Blantons. So this is the special reserve. So this is the 40% or the 80 proof one. We've the single barrel bourbon here, but these come out of the Buffalo Trace distillery.
Yeah.
And the thing about these is, and the thing about most of the bourbon we sell in Ireland, it's a lot of it's on allocation in the States, whereas here we have it and we have it freely available. So like something that's a shelf standard here, something like Eagle Rare, is on allocation in the US. So
when you say allocation, that means that...
So say Johnny's liquor store in Florida gets a pallet in on a Monday, right. And once that's gone, there's no more. Yeah, until the next allocation rolls around, which may be a month, it may be 2 months, okay. But they can't freely order it. Whereas here we have plenty of it.
One of the things that I've said in a few of the videos that I my ramblings, not that I ever ramble, but I've sort of said that we didn't really even have the shops here that were carrying it. I mean, Celtic were one of the few that were carrying it, or you were buying it from elsewhere. Japanese was the same. There were very few shops that were actually carrying the American brands, and like there's another bottle there, the Weller. So these ones do particularly well. So you've got the antiques, and you've got that's a special reserve. You've got the 107s.
So, but I think the thing is, so look, I work for Sazerac, which is the global company, which is one of the largest bourbon companies in the world. All right, and the thing was they wanted to grow. In terms of how big, in terms of actual scale, I think maybe fourth or fifth, something
in
around.
America.
But it's a privately owned company, so you don't necessarily hear as much about them because there's no shareholder. You know, there's no shareholders.
Have you met Mr. Sazerac?
Johnny Sazerac?
Yeah.
No, Johnny Sazerac is not.
Does he own the off license in Florida? Because he had Johnny's off license as well.
Same fella. Yeah.
Funny that.
Listen, I'd say he has a few, but no. Look, the thing is, obviously we want to kind of grow bourbon outside of America. We want to grow. Everybody wants to grow things outside of America, but you talk about. These stores weren't carrying bourbon, they weren't carrying, whatever.
Japanese.
They weren't carrying Irish whiskey for a long time.
Yeah. But I'm saying, the only places were the likes of Celtic, Bradley's, and a few dedicated.
But now, so I mean, High Spirits, who I worked for, set up in Ireland 4-5 years ago.
Okay.
And so one of the jobs was increasing distribution on some of the Buffalo Trace stuff, the Eagle Rare.
Obviously, you weren't the face of the business at the time.
No, but I mean, and that was to their detriment, obviously.
Yeah, obviously,
but no, look, we're in a position.
Face for business,
we're in a position where, I mean, Scotch and bourbon. So Scotch is about 10% of the Irish whiskey market of of what's sold in Ireland.
Is it?
Yeah, but a lot of that's going to be blended Scotch. You know what I mean? Okay. So your kind of your teachers, that kind of stuff that is high volume.
Are you saying teachers drink a lot of whiskey because they've nothing else to do? So, any teachers out there?
Teachers, brands like Teachers, Black and White, which were traditionally sold in Ireland. So they're going to do a lot of volume, and maybe a lower kind of value. Yeah. And then similar with the bourbon side of things. So. American whiskey was about 10% of what was sold in Ireland, but a lot of that again is going to be the likes of Jack Daniels, Okay. So introducing people to the likes of your Weller, so that kind of stuff.
Please do not throw the bottles around of that.
They're fine. I can catch them.
Don't own these bottles. I have to reiterate. When you're in here, these are other people's properties. Don't fucking do that.
But yeah, so the main thing is that these are now becoming a little bit more common on the shelves in Ireland, and it's not that. Look, you know me. I'm Irish whiskey
True and true.
through and through. But the thing is, these are complementary. If you don't know what else is out there and you don't taste other things.
Oh no, and I think that's what's happening is the guys are finding, and I think two of the biggest things that happened recently has been what we have in the charity auction this month is the Redbreast Heaven's Door one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just turned everybody's now looking at Heaven's Door, the brand.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get other releases from it. Now, whether to drink or to collect or where their agendas are is a bit of a mixed bag. Keeper's Heart with...
Brian Nation gone over there. Like,
yeah, your man, I couldn't think of his name there. The fella that was down in Cork tiddling with it.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah. They're now... I mean, that's going to be another one that people are going to... Well, they are losing their shit over trying to get bottles of it and all that sort of stuff. So that's another one.
But what a great concept that is to kind of pair up with Irish brands and, you know...
Who do you think it's more beneficial to?
Well, if you look at how big... So, Irish whiskey is about 8-9% of the global market.
Yeah.
Whereas bourbon is a multiple, or American whiskey is a multiple of that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I asked this question in Ireland when I say, you know, how big do you think Irish whiskey is as a percentage of global whiskey? Yeah. People be like 50, 60%.
I've heard you bleat that on.
Yeah. And I have the same lines I recycle, you know.
I was going to say. Do you ever come up with anything original?
Why would I need to come up with original things?
Well, just to be different, you know. I mean, you do the same video, that dancey thing, you do that all the time. I mean, come up with something different.
You've had this haircut since you were 15, like, so.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I don't do original, yeah. Maybe it is the original.
Yeah, but they broke the mold, alright.
Anyway. I reckon we should have got McGuinness here to do this, and then we would have had like a bunch of gingers. Actually, McGuinness denies that he's ginger. I think he claims to be strawberry blonde.
I never said I was ginger.
Yeah. Look at the fucking face thing.
Anyway, moving swiftly onwards.
So we've another one there, Angel's Envy, and then the Wild Turkey. Angel's Envy is a lovely one in the presentation. They're a cask strength one that was done for every year, an annual release.
Yeah, so that's the port one as well. So I think it's that one's small batches. You're kind of talking 8 to 12 kind of barrels in a batch as well.
Okay.
But again, you don't really see American whiskey or the American whiskies finished in.
Is that a new thing to them?
Finished in wine casks. Yeah, it is.
I think there's no. Is there any?
There's some technical specifications, yeah. But I mean, if you get into
big words, I couldn't think of
if you get into US technical specifications, I think there's about 53 different categories.
Right.
But obviously, bourbon is really, really specific.
Right.
And bourbon obviously has to have your brand new oak casks and whatnot, and they don't have to be from America. They can be from wherever. Yeah. But I think we're now starting to see a bit of more experimentation because you're starting to see smaller distilleries spring up who are pushing the boundaries in terms of what's allowed, what's available. And they're starting to make stuff like single malt, single grain. Yeah. You have the likes of Talnua there, kind of making pot still style, like, you know.
And that's one of the things too. I mean, we one of the things that's happened in recent years with people talking about Irish whiskey. Oh, we're going to be drowning in whiskey and yada yada yada. You think about it, our growth scale is still dwarfed by America. I mean, how many? I've heard ridiculous figures of how many distilleries were added last year.
Something I think is overall. I don't like. There is a lot of craft distilleries, a lot of small craft distilleries, like potentially in the thousands of craft distilleries now. Yeah. That's our mate Johnny sitting out the back with a still, like, you know, and it's one step above moonshine essentially. Yeah. But at the same time, there is that kind of growth. And I think the good thing about Irish whiskey is when we talk about growth, when we talk about all these new distilleries, how much does that actually increase the LPA capacity? So as in, like, Middleton was making whatever, call it 1 million LPA, just for argument's sake. How much do these 20 new distillery, the 20
bring to the party?
Maybe another million. Volume,
yeah.
You know, it's
when you've got, which brings it to our next point. When you've got,
that's called a segue, ladies and gentlemen. Just so okay.
It's called rambling in my world. When you've got Mulroy Bay, Michael above, with his half a barrel a week,
so
he doesn't threaten Middleton.
No, exactly. But I think this is class because I remember I was listening to I think it was one of Larry's podcasts.
Oh, don't listen to him. He's a dose.
Look.
He's from Cork.
Yeah, well. Listen, we both have our issues with Cork. I'm not going to lie to you.
I have no issues with Cork. I have lovely people in Cork.
Anyway.
Can't think of any offhand.
No.
But I'm sure there is lovely people. And then you've Omar, who got kicked out of Cork.
Yeah.
Got kicked out of Kerry first, kicked out of Cork, and he's now in hiding in Kerry.
Yeah, and so I've heard. I believe he's been offered a new job in Kerry. So if you see a lollipop man holding a bottle of whiskey, holding a bottle of whiskey, that'll be our Omar. But
he has actually, hasn't he? Yeah.
But yeah, the thing about Mulroy Bay, again, listen to a podcast.
Your LPA thing.
Yeah, half a barrel a week.
And Brendan above with 1 barrel a week.
Yeah.
I mean, between the two lads.
But I mean, there's a lot of.
I was listening to again that dose from Lowry from Cork.
Yeah.
And he was on about Fenberg Curran, and they were saying that something like 3,000 barrels a day filling, and it was something you just go, what? I mean, it's the numbers are mind-boggling for us. But then again, you look at America and the likes of Louisville or one of these places. I mean, you imagine their output compared to what we've got. But
exactly.
Again, the American thing. Here's one for you. I know you would have been aware of this, and I think this is now under Sazerac.
Yeah, this is a Sazerac product,
So everybody would know the Michael Collins. So we have a Michael Collins collection in this month's auction. So we'd all know the tall bottles, the big fellas, or the small peter ones that came from Cooley. This is the new release that was in America.
Yeah, so no plans at the moment, as far as I know, to bring it to Ireland. You know what I mean? But watch this space kind of thing.
There's elements of the design. So this emblem was on the bottles, and then the big fella was on this thing. The bottle itself is no different than an ordinary bottle, slightly taller, but I mean, it's not. Apparently, one of the things that about the old bottle was them on barbacks. They were a pain in the ass. So the big tall bottle, they wouldn't go into conventional barbacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the height of it, even the bottle of Eagle Rare, I've gone into places before and tried to sell that in, and you can see the height difference there. Yeah. And that's a problem. You know what I mean? That's a problem. With bars that are maybe made more for Irish size bottles, so your bottle of Paddy, your bottle of Powers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is amazing the things that maybe don't come into the thought process when they're designing the bottles.
I picked a few bottles when I sort of knew that you were here, and I thought it's an opportunity, one, to talk about the American stuff, because apparently you know a bit about it, because you got some fake award that you're going around bragging and blowing about that you.
I have it in the car. Do you want
No, I don't want to see it in the car. The new distilleries in Ireland are really coming in leaps and bounds. I mean, there's one there with Loughry and Lanesborough. They're doing some lovely things. Again, I suppose they're all working off a low starting point, because all they had was Cooley or Bushmill stock. Now when they start coming with their own stuff, I love that bottle because of the whiny thing, the big dent in its arse.
A punt.
Huh?
The punt.
Don't you call me a... that's what it's called. Is it generally called a punt?
Yeah.
You think I'd know that all the years around kitchens and shit like that I know.
It is class, in fairness, and there's so many things that go into when you're designing a bottle that the punt can only be a certain height, because the width in the neck and all this kind of crack. There's a lot of actual design.
How the hell do you know that?
Don't worry about what I know.
Right. One of the other things was, again, when I mentioned old Cooley stock, these are things, now I'm not referencing your expertise in this because you know all about whiskey, was these bottles, the likes of these bottles really go under the radar.
I think they're class. Like stuff like that, I think are class drinkers. If
yes,
you just want to crack open a bottle, there's probably not, it's not going to be worth thousands and whatever. But a fella bought a cask, split it among his mates, and he bottled it or whatever it was. They're class drinking whiskies. Like,
we've another set. There's a set of 6 bottles there from the Arran distillery. The Isle of Arran distillery. 10-year-olds. So they were some of the first liquid out of the Isle of Arran distillery.
Yeah.
So again, stuff like that is just. One, it's got a piece of history as well. I mean, there's not much more of that 99 stuff going to be available, realistically. You're never going to get it under Cooley's own label, because they seem to have just stopped doing everything. So all you can get then is the likes of the finished stuff that everybody else is doing, the Dunvilles and the Ecklenvilles and all that.
But that's why I think moving forward we're going to see, stuff like independent bottlers we're going to have a big flood of privately released bottles coming in the future with everybody buying casks and stuff.
I'm not going to get into that. I think that's a podcast on its own. They can't. I mean, here's one of the things of the cask ownership thing that I'm
Let's not delve down the rabbit hole too deeply, but there are going to be independent bottlers in Ireland, the likes of your Dahies and your Louise and of the world, who are going to end up with those casks,
Yeah, hopefully as well. So I mentioned Ecklenville. They seem to know a thing or two. Your man, what do you call the tall fella? Not the ginger one.
The wee fella?
No, not the wee fella. The big fella.
Oh, the big fella.
The big fella. Jarlath. He knows a bit about stuff. He's always telling me about Glendronachs.
Yeah.
And he's given me a fair few samples of Glendronachs, in fairness to him.
This is good stuff. When people say they don't like Scotch, it baffles me. You know, when they are whiskey drinkers and they say they don't like Scotch, baffles me, because stuff like this is class.
Some of the Glenmorangies, I've always said, some of the Glenfiddich as well, are fantastic.
Yeah, even the Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, they're larger distilleries, so they're not a small scale place, but they still produce great stuff.
Yeah.
Glendronach do some of the best whiskey out there. They genuinely sherry cask.
Is it the Glens? Is it because we're attached to the Glen bit of it? Glenfarclas. I've a couple of bottles of that at the minute, and I think it's just fantastic.
They're all Speyside, whiskies. So you're going to get a similar taste profile. You're going to get a similar flavour, and it's really easily drank. It's palatable. Whereas I suppose if you go out to the islands, you're going to get a little bit more of a
smack in the chops.
Yeah. And some people like that, and some people don't, and that's fair enough.
And do you, just now that I have you, I'll put you on the spot, do you think that that's going to grow? Will that help the Irish market? Who helps what more, if you know what I mean? Is that you're trying to get Scotch drinkers to Irish, so do you give them the WD O'Connells, that's the peated, do you give them the stuff like that and say, well look, come a wee bit our way and you'll get this? And then it brings them into the pot stills and everything else.
Of course, that's going to be more beneficial because they're far larger. They're way bigger than us globally. Yeah. So if we produce something in what is more traditionally seen as, in the last 50 years, say, a Scotch style, then it makes it more approachable for people coming across from Scotch. Because I think there's a big problem with perception in Irish whiskey that a lot of people will be like, it's only whiskey for shots or whatever it is.
Bugs me.
And that's obviously not our impression, but globally.
I think I said it in one of my first ever videos talking about it. We talk about premium Irish whiskey and all that sort of stuff. If you were saying to a Frenchman about drinking French wine as shots, if they did, or to dismiss it as just for getting drunk, I think they'd be fairly fucking irate about it. Whereas we're sort of going, oh well, that's what it is. And I know that IDL are sort of trying to change the conversations by bringing in the pot stills in America and all that sort of stuff. But how does Dahi or how do any of these smaller brands, they have to sort of go in on the coattails of it. So are they then trying to say, well, ours is a wee bit more premium, we've got a single malt? Again, my original argument. You say to any guy on Wall Street about single malt and he thinks Scotch and it's premium and you're standing with your rocks glass and he's drinking that. You say to him Irish and it's for getting fucked up and drunk. The perception thing is a huge challenge that Irish whiskey's got to overcome. Yeah. And how did they do it?
So I suppose it's what you're doing originally is you probably have to send the tank in first. So Jameson goes in and it breaks open the door for everybody else, and then everybody else pours in afterwards. But it's going to be a category led thing. So when we talk about pot still being the new thing, it's really hard to push pot still because people don't understand the category. So if you're in single malt, at least they go, cool. They may not again understand what single malt is, but they know it's good. It's this thing about right, I know age is good, I know single malt is good, these are words I like.
And without putting words in your mouth, I don't know if you can answer this, do you think that Middleton are now aware of that, and maybe whereas Napo will come under the umbrella to try and, I mean, traditionally Middleton didn't have a single malt to go that argument, to go that conversation, whereas now they do under the portfolio with Napog or other brands. Again, I always think about marketing budgets. To me, when I'm having the conversation,
you always think about marketing budgets.
Well, I don't always think about marketing. Please don't lean up against that. If it falls, I probably will skin you. Would have to glue the bottles back together before Sunday.
Are they not screwed in?
No, they are. They're anchored down, but it's just the pure weight, top weight of them. Marketing budgets was IDL control a finite amount of money or relatively infinite amount of money, whereas what can Michael and what can Brendan do? What can even Lochrie? I mean, are they going to throw 10 grand at a marketing plan for?
But I mean, does it? What do they need? You know what I mean? The what in terms of sales that a smaller brand needs is a lot.
Definitely.
What a bigger brand needs,
especially when you've got guys like you on their salary as well.
Well, listen, I am expensive. You will get the bit invoice for today. It will be hefty.
We're setting up a GoFundMe for obviously donations accepted, because I think we get a grant for having you here for the day.
Yeah.
I think we are done. I bow to your expertise in American because you are the world's. What was your official title?
Icon of whiskey.
Yeah.
Whiskey Magazine, Icon of Whiskey, BA American Whiskey Brand Ambassador of the Year 2021.
Have you won any other awards, or was this just out of the blue? Like when you bought it,
out of the blue.
Well, obviously you didn't get it for your hard work. So I mean, did you buy it?
I'm here on some sort of community outreach, helping you grow your business, and you're giving me this kind of.
Then trying to sell me a last drop thing, and it would be the last drop I'd probably drink as well. The prices you charge anyway. Right, that's it. We're gone. Auction ends on Sunday night at 7 p.m. Get your bids in.
Maybe buy something, maybe don't. Who cares? Huh?
No, don't say that. You can't say that. You say promote Irish.
So yeah. Fuck it.
Bye.